Professor Symons possessed an unparalleled passion for scholarship, his community, and his country. His vision for the nation was one where all Canadians could know themselves through an appreciation of their past and through a mutual understanding of their shared present. In doing so, it was his sincerest wish that Canadians would find both the inspiration and hope required to face the future together. On his personal journey to humbly know more, he touched the lives of countless people. He was passionate in his lifelong role as a scholar, teacher, mentor, and leader.
When I came to Trent University as a historian and someone who had worked for the federal government, meeting Tom Symons was one of the most incredible moments of my life. And I first met him just through a cold call. He didn't know who I was. I was a young lecturer, still a PhD student, and hadn't finished my studies. And so he didn't know me from anyone. And I very nervously called him up one day and asked, would you be able to give a guest lecture, because you know so much about National Historic Sites and monuments and Ontario monuments. Would you talk about heritage and history and the importance of that to my students? And I fully expected him to be too busy to take any interest. And he said, of course, I would love to. And that meant the world to me. And it opened my eyes to how much he loved teaching, how much he loved students. And right even to his final days, he was so interested in what students thought, and if he could take on another student, if he could have just one more student that he could give a seminar to. And that was so important for him because he truly loved young people and the ideas, the fresh ideas that they could bring to perhaps some of the stuffy corners of academia.
I think people speak a lot about him bringing the student experience, particularly because they think of him in response to the educational aspect of what he did. And I, as a personal comment, would just say that he extended that personal experience to the way in which he interacted with everyone. I thought of myself as one of his students, and I must say that I learned with every encounter I ever had with him. In many ways, he was a mentor. He was always thinking about ways in which we could be mischievous. And he would, respecting the limits, particularly of the position that I'm in right now, but he'd always push at the edges. His resilience was just remarkable. And every encounter I had with him left me full of energy, totally recharged.
I met Tom Symons in unique circumstances. I became president of the university on the 50th anniversary of Trent University. And I will say it was a little bit of a surreal situation because I was the new president, but being the president of the university, I was the host of the 50th anniversary celebrations of Trent University, but I had just arrived at the university. I didn't know the people. I didn't know the traditions. I didn't know where the skeletons were buried. And in that circumstance, that's the circumstance in which I got to know Tom Symons. And I wouldn't say he took me under his wing, but he did make an effort to help me get through that time by telling me about the history of Trent, by introducing me to people, and by talking about what Trent was, what he wanted it to be, also a little bit what other people wanted it to be. And I'm indebted to him for that help when I first came to the university.
My first contact with Dr. Symons was when a graduate student in the Canadian Indigenous Studies program. And of course, everybody knew who he was, and everybody knew the incredible contribution that he made to Trent University, but to other universities. But then when I became a board member about 6 years ago, he was one of the very early individuals to reach out to and thank you. And he, as I said, was a prolific note writer, would often scribble a note to you and just say, you know, thank you, congratulations, and what have you. And he was just the type of guy that was always there. He seemed to be a presence in Trent University, and was right from its founding, and always tried to enable and help individuals that had taken on leadership positions, myself included, on the board. Just a tremendous source of inspiration and of insight as well.
Professor Symons' genuine desire to obtain comment and suggestions from you as an assistant if you were working together, be it on remarks that he was putting together or a forward that he might be working on for a publication or a report that he was doing. He genuinely wanted you to provide your own suggestions and comments, and they often served as a point of departure for discussion. They weren't necessarily always incorporated into the final draft, and that really didn't matter because, again, it was about that dialogue and that ability to work together towards whatever goal was in mind.
So my first personal memory was actually at our home when Professor Symons, president of Trent University, was coming for lunch. As a young teenager, I was rather dreading what I thought would be a long meal, sitting quietly, listening to dry, formal academic conversation. And instead, I remember twinkling eyes. I remember warmth and laughter. And I have a lasting memory of how valued he made me feel and how genuinely interested he was in my thoughts and opinions and how honored I felt. And I believe he touched many, many people throughout his life in exactly this way, giving them a feeling of self-worth, of pushing them gently to go for it. And I was really fortunate that I had many ongoing opportunities to benefit from this wisdom and probing questions and encouragement, as he played significant roles in my family's business, museum, and in my life for many years after that.
Tom was the honorary president of the Alumni Association for decades, a role he was deeply committed to. He believed strongly in maintaining alumni connections, and he was a role model for each TUAA president, as well as the directors of the alumni office. He was my trusted mentor.
It was teaching, and it was making sure that education was accessible and that people loved the time that they spent getting educated. He loved to teach. He loved his students. He just truly, that was his greatest pleasure, was teaching and spending time with students, was mentoring students, was helping them to get into their programs they wanted to do, and really encouraging students to carry on with their education and to do their undergraduate degree. If they were in Canada, do it in Canada, and then go on and do your postgraduate degrees wherever you want. But if you were a Canadian, stay in Canada and do your undergraduate degree here.
Tom had a wonderful ability, as I've already said, I think, to relate to young people, and in particular to give them spontaneously and naturally a sense of confidence in themselves, a kind of belief in themselves, perhaps just by the way in which he took them seriously and listened to them, conveyed to them that maybe they were significant people, that they had things to do and roles to play in life. It was a wonderful gift that he had to convey that to people, and it changed my life, and I think it changed many others.